Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Pretty Suited Podcast, where we discuss pop culture and personal development. I am your host, Lauren A. I hope you guys enjoyed your Thanksgiving holiday, Turkey Day, whatever you want to call it. But I hope you guys were able to fellowship with your family this past week. I know I did. I ate good. I ate too good, to the point where basically I need to do a whole detox this week. But honestly, as we wrap up this year, we start to think about what we are grateful for and how we would like to spend the remaining weeks of the year, as well as moving forward into the new year. So while I was traveling last week to visit my family, I got a chance to catch up on a few things, including a few albums that I've been meaning to listen to. And I stumbled upon an album that I feel like basically summed up a lot of the conversations that we have been having this past year when it comes to love, or when it comes to the lack thereof, and how we're responding to love in this day and age. And that is Wale's album, Everything Is a Lot. Wale is an artist that I feel like is not only underrated, but underappreciated for the insight that he has contributed to our culture throughout the years. I've been a huge fan since the beginning, since his mixtape era, since the All About Nothing albums, since the, Forlorn albums and things like that. And he's always been considered a top tier rap artist. People want to put him in the top 5 or put him in the top 3 if you talk about the Kendricks, the Drakes, the Big Sean's, and so on and so forth. He is in that era. He is in that ilk. Actually, I believe he came out around the same time as Kendrick, J. Cole, and Drake. But he always kind of flew under the radar when it comes to people's favorites. And a lot can be said about that. There's so many different things that have contributed to this narrative. Some of it self-inflicted, which we're going to get into, and some of it not, right? Just blatant exposure can play a part in this conversation. He may not have had as much exposure as his counterparts to be named in the top rappers of the time. And so, however, that does not deflect from the talent that he has. And in this past album, we see this talent in full display. I'm not going to lie. Like I said, as a fan, I've been following his career, and I've seen kind of ebbs and flows in what I would consider to be his best projects and his not so best projects. Some artists try to capture just a hit, and make that their identity. Trying to just go after something that, can be played on radio, something that is just for the girls. And he's always been the artist to not leave the women out of the conversation, so to speak. He's always had great female centered albums or female centered songs that resonated with a lot of women. And I've enjoyed every last single one of them just because I felt like he spoke from an emotional place. And in this particular album, I feel like it's some of his best work. The title says it all. Everything is a lot. Right? I feel like everybody feels that way right now. I don't know about you, but just everything is happening all at once. And it's been pretty exhausting, especially in the year of 2025, where we're just politically, socially, romantically, everything just feels like a lot. And he summarized a lot of great points in this album. Now, this episode is not meant to be a full album breakdown. I do those sometimes in Pretty Suited Reactions, which you can just check those out. That's separate. But this particular episode is really meant to talk about some focal points that he highlights in this album, which I think a lot of not only people suffer from, but specifically men suffer from. First of all, the first few songs of this album really hit the nail on the head for me, because outside of just what you would call emo rap, where woe is me and I wish I would have, and nobody wants me type thing. We get that. We can get that from other Wale albums and other people's albums and so on and so forth. But what I think he did a great job at is diving into the mind of a person who felt broken, got some kind of healing through therapy or medicine or so on and so forth, was broken again, and now trying to figure it out again. And nobody talks about that space, right? Where you understood that something needed to happen, changes needed to happen. And then you took the chance to try to rectify that and fix it and do the right thing and go to therapy and stuff like that. But then something triggered you to where now you're back in the same place, but you're in that place with more awareness. And I think in this album, he did a really good job of spelling out his faults, his strengths, his boundaries. And I feel like with all the information that we have right now in the world, where, we have therapy words for everything, we have podcasts for everything. So we're aware of our faults, right? We could put a title on it. We could put a label on it because we love labeling things these days, right? But the question is, what are we going to do with this information? What are we going to do with this newfound understanding of how we can improve? Are we just going to understand it and then that's it? Or are we actually going to put forth some effort to change it so that we can have a better life, moving forward? And so in this album, Everything is a Lot, I feel like it encompasses that everything is a lot, and it's something that I have to daily digest and kind of analyze and kind of interpret, so that way I can still do what I have to do. And I feel like a lot of men, such as Wale, feel like they're misunderstood. They feel like they're misunderstood, not necessarily because of lack of exposure, right? Because everybody and their mom has one of these. Everybody and their mom has a microphone, whether you're an artist or whether you're a podcaster, whether you just have an Instagram page and you just doing confessionals out of the front seat of your car, right? Everybody has a chance to get their voice heard. However, do you feel seen? And everybody's in a scramble to feel seen, that it's becoming oversaturated to the point where nobody's actually listening. I saw a meme that put things into perspective for me when it comes to how men see each other and how men see themselves in a romantic space. Let's just be completely honest here. I feel like a lot of men get their validation from other men. In this particular video, actually, it was a video, I think, by Mr. J. Hill. He mentioned that oftentimes it's not women who necessarily see men who try to do good, who try to be their best selves, who try to be emotionally intelligent as corny or as simp or as, feminine, but it's really the men who do that as well. And until you change the perception of what a man is supposed to look like, then we're never really going to get to a place where the good man is the mission, is the goal. Because as he mentioned, we talk about Russell Wilson, for an example, as a guy who seemingly is a good man and who we're calling, husband material and all things like that. But you have men who consider him to be corny, and then also very angry that Sierra chose him after she decided to be with a bad boy or whatever the case with Future. And, that's none of my business. Shout out to all those individuals involved. However, I want to expand this conversation because I hear this a lot. I hear men oftentimes very frustrated that they feel that they're chosen last or as a second thought after the women have had their run and had the trauma and had the babies and had all this stuff with men who were not so good men. And so they feel like an afterthought. They feel like they're used or they're abused or mistreated because of that. No man or no woman comes up to you and say, look, I just want to do this, and that. I'm a terrible person. I'm emotionally unavailable. I just want to use you for intimacy. I don't have this for you, whatever the case. Nobody comes to you with just blatant truth like that, right? They manipulate, they lie, whatever the case may be, to get what it is that they want. And so in that sense, I don't think anybody is seeking to get hurt or seeking to be with a person to get dogged out. It tends to happen once you have been in these spaces with these people and the facade falls. And then you end up with a person you didn't really want to be with, or you end up with a person who is totally different than what you thought that they were or what they presented to be. And so in that same instance, everybody goes through that. Everybody goes through the intention of being with somebody who will care for them, who will love them, who will treat them right. But then something happens and that changes. And then you're on to the next person. That's what dating is. So the idea or the concept that men have that, women get used and abused and then want to be with the good guy later, I've always wanted to be with the good guy. That was the plan. Although he presented to be a bad boy, how he presented to me was that he was a good guy until he wasn't. And so that's when the kind of facade falls, and then you're already emotionally invested, and then you end up with the trauma in response to that. And so unfortunately, you have to let go of that trauma or work through that trauma to get to be better for the next person. But unfortunately, I feel like we're kind of like the Spider-Man meme at this point, where we're really just pointing to each other to find out who was to blame for not being chosen. And honestly, if you really want to be honest here, I'm glad that she didn't choose you. I'm not mad at the man who wasn't chosen by the woman in college to be the love of her life. I'm not mad at her. I'm actually happy that didn't happen because now you're in my life. So it's weird to me how people don't see it that way. That, you're upset that none of the past relationships worked, but not excited that they didn't work so that we can actually work. Because if they did work, you wouldn't be here. Like, that's how my brain works. But going back to Wale, he comes across as a person who felt slighted. Throughout his career, that's kind of been the chip on his shoulder, was that he felt slighted by not only the rap industry, but by the women in his life. I mean, majority of his songs are, you didn't choose me, you chose this other guy, you dogged me out, you cheated on me, I was emotionally unavailable for you, and you didn't have any boundaries, so you let me run you over. Or you did have boundaries and you didn't let me run you over. So most of his content is his quest to figure out why he is not the top of the list and why he wasn't chosen. And why, just like other men, I feel like people carry the hurt of not being chosen and they wear it as literally a shawl. They wear it as a scarf. They wear it as a trench coat. And it carries throughout their conversation, no matter how good looking they are. If you don't feel like you're the first option, you're always going to carry some sort of resentment towards people. Even if you were presented with something or somebody who actually showed you love, in the back of your brain, you're going to be like, well, why did you choose me? Is this a fluke? Is this going to go up in flames? I don't even want to get too invested because you're going to leave me. So that kind of anxious attachment is something that's very real. It can either translate into an anxious attachment style, right? Where a person feels like, okay, please don't leave me, so I'm going to latch onto you like a flea and a tick and never let you go. And then when you finally let me go, dang it, you reinforced my suspicions, and now everything sucks, right? Or it can translate into an avoidant attachment where it's like, I don't trust that you'll actually be around, because I was never really chosen in the past. So I'm not going to get so involved because I don't want to get hurt again. And either way, it's just unhealthy. But one thing I will say, I see a budding in his interviews to where he seems like he's more mentally there. And it might take some time. It takes some time to unlearn all of the things that you've taught yourself. It takes some time to unlearn all of the things that you've told yourself over and over and over again, that only reinforces the negative voices that you constantly say anyway. It takes time to unlearn that. It takes time to actually be optimistic about something and change your thought pattern to where you are not looking for the worst case scenario, where you're not looking for people to do you wrong. If it happens, it happens, right? We can't control how other people act, right? We can only control how we respond to it. And so if we don't take hold of the negative thoughts, if we don't take hold of the apathy or the lack of effort or how we go into situations, then of course it's going to end up the exact way you wanted it to be, which is terrible because you put that energy out there for it to return to you. And so I want to say shout out to Wale for recognizing some of these things. Now, does he have a long way to go to kind of make sure that he is completely, maybe not even completely, right? Because who is really completely healed all the way? Nobody. But I think enough healing to where he doesn't end up self-sabotaging situations just for his trauma and his triggers. Okay. Yeah, so if you have a chance, if you have an opportunity to check out the Everything Is a Lot album, I really, really, really like this album. I really enjoy seeing a man, specifically a black man, understand that the cards may not always be dealt in your favor, but it's up to you to make the changes that you want to see. And in order for that to happen, you have to let go of the narrative. You have to let go of the validation, the external validation that you attempt to get from other people, specifically men or women that literally don't mean you any good, for one, or have the inability to rationalize and critically think about their own issues. How are you going to tell me what's wrong with me? How are you going to reject me? How are you going to discredit me? And you don't even have your stuff together. So we have to be able to not worry about the external validation that we're constantly trying to seek out. You have to be okay with who you are. And regardless if somebody chooses you or not, you have to choose yourself every time. So until next time, you cannot manifest the life that you don't feel like you deserve. So create the life that you want and look to the sky for grace. Bye-bye. For all that life has in store, health, culture, and more.